the 400 years of silence. What really happened between the Old and New Testaments? Imagine living in a time when God had spoken repeatedly to his people through prophets, miracles, and extraordinary signs, and then, suddenly, everything stopped. No new prophecies, no new books of scripture, no recognized prophet speaking to the entire nation. For nearly 4 centuries, heaven seemed silent. But was God truly absent? After the ministry of the prophet Malachi, traditionally regarded as the last prophet of the Old Testament, Israel entered a period often called the 400 years of silence. This expression does not mean that God abandoned his people. Rather, it refers to the absence of new inspired biblical writings and nationally recognized prophets like those who had guided Israel for centuries. At that time, the Jewish people were living under the rule of the Persian Empire. Jerusalem had been rebuilt after the Babylonian exile, and the temple once again stood at the heart of Jewish worship. Yet the promises spoken by the prophets still seemed unfulfilled. The long-awaited Messiah had not yet come. While it appeared that heaven was silent, history was moving rapidly. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered vast territories with astonishing speed. His empire spread Greek culture and language throughout the ancient world. Even after his death, that influence remained for generations. At first glance, this might seem like nothing more than a political event. However, many scholars point out that the widespread use of the Greek language later made it possible for the message of Jesus and the writings of the New Testament to be understood by people across many different regions. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals. Israel found itself caught between rival kingdoms and became the center of repeated political struggles. The Jewish people experienced periods of relative peace, followed by seasons of severe persecution. One of the darkest moments came during the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He attempted to force Greek customs upon the Jewish people and outlawed many of their religious practices. The temple in Jerusalem was desecrated, causing outrage among those who remained faithful to God's covenant. This persecution sparked the Maccabean revolt, led first by Mattathias and later by his sons, especially Judas Maccabeus. The Jewish people fought to regain their religious freedom. After years of conflict, they succeeded in reclaiming Jerusalem and rededicating the temple. This historic event is still remembered today through the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights. During this same period, several religious groups either emerged or became increasingly influential. The Pharisees emphasized strict obedience to God's law and the traditions of the elders. The Sadducees were closely associated with the priesthood and the temple. The scribes devoted themselves to studying and interpreting the scriptures. These groups would later play significant roles during the ministry of Jesus. Meanwhile, another empire was rising in the West. Rome steadily expanded its power until it conquered Judea. Under Roman rule, an extensive network of roads connected cities across the empire, and a period of relative stability made travel and communication easier than ever before. These conditions would later allow the gospel to spread rapidly throughout the Roman world. Although there were no new prophets, the Jewish people continued waiting for the fulfillment of God's promises. Many expected a political leader who would overthrow Israel's enemies. Others looked for a king descended from David who would restore the kingdom forever. Hope for the Messiah continued to grow. The ancient prophecies of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, and other prophets were faithfully read and discussed in synagogues scattered throughout the land. Then, after centuries without a new prophetic voice recorded in Scripture, something extraordinary happened. In a small town in Judea, a priest named Zechariah received a visit from an angel while serving in the temple. The angel announced that his elderly wife, Elizabeth, would give birth to a son. That child would become John the Baptist, the one chosen to prepare the way for the Lord. Soon afterward, the angel Gabriel appeared to a young woman named Mary in the town of Nazareth. She was told that she would give birth to Jesus, the Son of God, fulfilling promises spoken centuries earlier by the prophets. The silence had finally come to an end. What had seemed like centuries of waiting was actually a time of preparation. The world had changed dramatically. Greek had become a common language across much of the known world. Roman roads made long-distance travel easier than ever before. Jewish synagogues were established in many cities, providing places where the apostles would first proclaim the gospel. From a historical perspective, these developments created a unique setting for the beginning of Christianity. For many Christians, this demonstrates that God was still directing history, even when his voice seemed silent. The silence was not a sign of abandonment, it was a season of preparation. That message still resonates today. There are moments when prayers seem unanswered, when God appears distant, and when silence feels overwhelming. Yet the biblical story invites us to consider that even during those quiet seasons, God may still be working behind the scenes. The 400 years between the Old and New Testaments were far from empty. They were centuries filled with political, cultural, and religious changes that prepared the world for one of history's greatest events, the birth of Jesus Christ. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this remarkable period is this: silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes, during the quietest moments, God is preparing something greater than we can imagine. If you enjoyed this story and would like to explore more fascinating events from the Bible, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us which biblical story you'd like to see next, and join us as we continue uncovering the incredible history and timeless truths found in Scripture.